My wife looked me in the eye, held her wine glass like it was nothing more than a prop in some twisted performance, and said, "I think we should open up the marriage." Just like that. No warning. No emotion. As if she were asking me to pass the salt. She said it with the same breath she used to compliment her new earrings. An anniversary gift, I should add, from the man she'd been sleeping with for months. In that moment, something in me went still. Not broken, just still, like a switch had flipped, and I stopped trying to convince someone to love me the way I deserved. She thought she had the upper hand, that I'd beg, cry, scream. I did none of that. I watched her expose the rot she'd been hiding behind her curated smile and diamond rings, and I made a decision. I wouldn't save the marriage. I'd save myself, and more importantly, I'd save our daughters. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're watching from. We love seeing how our stories bring people together from every corner of the world. Your thoughts and comments are what make this community so special, and we're truly grateful to have you here. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story filled with drama, resilience, and unexpected twists. Now, settle in, get comfortable, and maybe grab your favorite drink because this is a tale you won't want to miss. Let's get started. My wife looked me in the eye, held her wine glass like it was nothing more than a prop in some twisted performance, and said, "I think we should open up the marriage," just like that. No warning, no emotion, as if she were asking me to pass the salt. She said it with the same breath she used to compliment her new earrings, an anniversary gift, I should add, from the man she'd been sleeping with for months. In that moment, something in me went still, not broken. Just still, like a switch had flipped. I didn't feel rage or sorrow. I felt clarity, not the kind that blinds, but the kind that sharpens. She thought she was being bold, progressive, but really, she was just revealing what had already died between us. She thought she had the upper hand, that I'd beg, cry, scream, but I didn't. I did none of that. I sat there and watched her, watched the woman I once knew finish her wine like she'd just said something liberating. It was a Thursday in April, unusually warm for Manhattan. I'd wrapped up a client walkthrough in Soho ahead of schedule and thought I'd surprise Sabella and the girls with dinner. I picked up cannoli from Little Italy, 2 hazelnut hot chocolates for Mila and Evie, and even a bottle of her favorite Barolo. Mila had texted me earlier that morning, asking if we could do a family dinner for once. Her words, not mine. When I walked into the penthouse, Sabella didn't look up. She was leaning against the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone with that slight curve of her lip she always wore when she thought she was better than the room she was in. She didn't say hello. No, "You're home early." No smile. Just a glance over the rim of her glass. "Where are the girls?" I asked. My voice was even, but I felt something twist in my gut. "With my mom," she said breezily. "I needed to talk to you without the drama." She called our daughters drama. I set the food down, untouched. Something in her tone had already told me that dinner wasn't happening. She gestured toward the living room. I followed, but I didn't sit. Not yet. She wore a silk robe, tied loosely like an afterthought, and beneath it, no effort to hide the fact that she hadn't dressed alone. I stayed standing. That's when she dropped it. "I think we should open up the marriage." Just like that. No build-up, no apology, no regret. I stared at her. The woman I used to cook Sunday breakfast with, who used to sit on the floor with the girls for hours coloring until their hands were stained with markers. That version of her had vanished months ago, maybe years. What stood before me now was a polished PR campaign in heels, selling me on betrayal as liberation. She studied my face, waiting for the reaction. I gave her none. "And Grayson?" I asked. I wanted to see if she'd lie. She didn't flinch. You already know. I nodded. The signs had been there. The after-hours meetings, the late-night showers, the new lingerie, and the way she lit up when his name showed up on her phone. I didn't want to lie, she added, sipping again. But I didn't want to be stuck either. We're stagnant, Ryan. You work, you parent, you disappear. Stagnant. That's what she called the life I built for all of us. I thought about the spa days I covered for her, the school pickups I rearranged my entire work schedule for, the anniversary trips she forgot to plan but I still made happen, the art supplies I kept stocked because Mila wanted to be like her mom. I thought about Evie's bedtime stories, the ones I told when Sabella claimed migraines or mood swings, but I said none of that. Instead, I asked, "Why now?" She gave a tired smile. "Because it's time we stop pretending." I nodded again. I didn't need more. I had all I needed. "I'm not going to fight you," I said, "but I won't share you." "You already have," she said with a half smirk, like it was a punchline. "You're just late to admit it." I turned, picked up my phone, texted her mother. "When will you be back with the girls?" Then I left. The doorman looked startled when I passed him, still holding the cannoli box and 2 hot chocolates now turning cold. I stepped onto the street and dumped it all into a trash bin without hesitation. That night, I didn't go home. I checked into a quiet suite at the Mercer, drew the curtains, and sat in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't scroll through old photos or reread texts. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and titled it Safeguard. Inside, I typed the first entry, document everything, protect the girls. Sabella thought this would be the part where the house crumbled, where the father disappeared and the mother reinvented herself, where the man spiraled and the woman thrived. She was wrong, because what she didn't realize, what Grayson wouldn't realize either, is that I don't raise my voice when I'm hurt. I sharpen my mind, and I wasn't going to destroy her. I was going to show her what it feels like when a man doesn't crumble, when he rebuilds, quietly, precisely, without mercy, not out of spite, but out of necessity, for Mila, for Evie, for me, because this wasn't just the death of a marriage. It was the rebirth of a man no longer willing to be collateral in someone else's ego trip. She thought I'd chase her. She thought she'd own the narrative. But she just handed me the pen, and I was about to rewrite everything. I didn't go home for 3 days. Not because I was avoiding Sabella. I already knew what I was dealing with. But because I needed to stay clear, surgical, and emotionally steady. I spent those 3 days setting up systems, digital backups, cloud storage, a secure note-taking app to log interactions. I spoke with Clare, a private family law attorney whose name I'd gotten from a friend in real estate. She didn't ask me why I needed help. She just asked, "Do you want this to be quiet, or do you want it to be finished?" "Both," I said. The 4th day, I returned to the penthouse just before dawn. The girls were still asleep. Sabella wasn't home. I walked through our once-shared space like a guest. I noticed little things I hadn't before, how the framed family photo on the console had been replaced with an abstract art print, how her scent no longer lingered in the hallway, how the Bluetooth speaker still played her playlist on loop, even though the home felt empty of her. I went to the utility closet and pulled out a camera kit I had bought months ago under the guise of upgrading our home security. I had lied. I bought it after the first time Mila came home with questions that didn't match Sabella's timeline. She had asked me, "Why did Mommy say we were at Grandma's when we actually went to a restaurant with her friend?" Her voice had that innocent confusion, like she thought she was the one remembering wrong. That's when I knew I had to stop guessing. I had to start knowing. I installed 3 micro cameras, one in the hallway near the girls' bedroom, one facing the front door, and one angled to catch the kitchen and living area, just wide enough to track late-night activity, but not invasive enough to feel wrong. I wasn't proud of it, but I was done being blindsided. Later that morning, Sabella came home. She didn't ask where I'd been. She barely looked at me, just breezed past with a heavy shopping bag in each hand and a forced, "Good morning." Her hair was curled like she'd been to a blowout bar, and she wore a sharp red blazer, the one she usually saved for gallery launches. I watched her disappear into the bedroom, then heard the closet doors slide open. Evie ran out a few minutes later in pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy?" she asked. I knelt. "Hey, little star. Want breakfast?" She nodded and hugged my leg. As I carried her to the kitchen, Mila appeared at the hallway corner. Unlike Evie, she didn't smile. Her eyes locked on me, and she looked cautious, older than 10. "You're back," she said softly. I nodded. "Just for today." "Is Mom mad at you?" she asked. "No, sweetheart," I said. "We just need some space right now. But I'm always here for you. That never changes." She hesitated, then walked over and handed me something. It was a sticky note with a rough drawing. Me, her, and Evie sitting at a table. Sabella was off to the side, holding a phone. "This was yesterday," she whispered. "Mom said not to show anyone." I glanced at the note, then looked at her. "Thank you for trusting me." That night, I watched the security feed from the day before, and then the one before that, and the one before that. It didn't take long to confirm what I feared. Grayson had been there, twice in the span of 3 days. Never long. Just enough to talk in low voices, stand too close in the kitchen, and once, kiss her near the window like they were posing for a scandal. Worse than the affair was the way she ignored the girls during those visits. Evie tried to show her a drawing. Sabella waved her away. Mila came to ask for help with homework. Sabella closed the door. That footage was my turning point. The next morning, I scheduled a private session with Clare. I brought the footage, the screenshots, and a statement I had written documenting a timeline of events from the last 6 months. She reviewed everything quietly. "Most men don't prepare like this," she finally said. "I'm not most men," I replied. Clare looked impressed, but she didn't smile. "This isn't just about infidelity. This is about neglect, emotional and parental, and that, Ryan, is what gives you leverage." We mapped a strategy. No confrontation, no public exposure, no emotional games. I would remain steady, quiet, fully documented. Sabella wouldn't even realize I had moved. A few days later, Inez invited me to lunch. We met at a quiet bistro in Tribeca. She arrived wearing dark sunglasses, her tone more serious than usual. "I'm going to say something you won't want to hear," she said after we ordered, "but I think you already know. Try me." "Sabella's been introducing Grayson as her partner at gallery circles," she said, "and she's been telling people that you two agreed to a modern co-parenting arrangement." I blinked. That was fast. "She's trying to control the narrative. She wants sympathy before you even get a word in." "I expected that," I said. "Thank you for telling me." Inez leaned forward. "I don't care what happens between you two, Ryan, but I care about those girls. And Mila's been showing up at art class. Off. Off how? Withdrawn. Anxious. She keeps asking if she'll have to choose which parent to live with." My heart sank. I haven't told Sabella that Mila confides in me, but maybe I should. "No," I said. "Please don't. Not yet. Let her keep that outlet. I'll handle the rest." That night, I got a message from Sabella. "My mother can't keep the girls this weekend. I have a retreat in Montauk. Can you take them?" I replied, "Always." She didn't thank me. Friday evening, I picked them up myself. Mila brought a book bag twice her size, stuffed with schoolwork and art supplies. Evie had her stuffed giraffe and 3 different snacks. Both of them looked relieved to see me. On the drive back to the hotel suite, Mila finally asked, "Dad, are you leaving forever?" "No," I said. "I'm just making things better. For you, for Evie, for me." She looked out the window, then said, "Mom doesn't see us when he's around." That line cracked something inside me I couldn't repair. We got back, ordered pizza, and watched The Incredibles, their favorite. Evie fell asleep halfway through, clutching my arm. Mila stayed awake longer, her head on my shoulder. After I tucked them in, I opened my laptop and typed another entry into the safeguard folder. Sabella's timeline shifting. Children emotionally impacted. Keep all physical custody discussions private. Build evidence through stability. The next morning, Mila left a drawing on the desk. It was our family again, but this time it was just me, her, and Evie in a small house with a garden. Sabella wasn't in the frame. She hadn't erased her mother. She had simply drawn what safety looked like now. That was all the permission I needed. I didn't have to win Sabella back. I didn't need to get even with Grayson. I didn't need a dramatic confrontation in a courtroom or a viral video to expose them. I needed one thing: to build a home where my daughters would never again feel invisible. And if that meant Sabella had to lose everything she thought she'd manipulate her way into keeping, so be it. Because I wasn't playing by her rules anymore. I was writing my own. By the time Sabella realized I had shifted into another gear, it was already too late for her to recover control. It began quietly. I returned to the penthouse for the first time in weeks. Not because I missed the place, but because I wanted her to see me steady, composed, and undeniably present. No rage, no pleading, no need to explain anything. The moment I walked through the door, she looked up from her laptop with a practiced coolness that bordered on smug. "I was wondering when you'd crawl back," she said. I smiled faintly. "Not crawling, just collecting." She narrowed her eyes. "Collecting what?" "Time, space, proof." She scoffed, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Not fear, not yet, but unease. Sabella had always been emotionally fluent. She knew how to bait people, to escalate and retreat just enough to win ground without looking like the aggressor. But now that fluency was breaking down. She asked if I wanted coffee. I said no. I walked into my office, gathered a box of personal items, and left without a word. The first real fracture happened a week later. It was a Wednesday. Mila had her parent-teacher conference at Eastgate, and I showed up alone. Sabella was supposed to attend, but at the last minute she texted, "Can't make it. Client dinner." No apology, no reschedule. Just that. Mrs. Avery, Mila's homeroom teacher, greeted me with concern. "She's brilliant, Ryan. Sharp, empathetic, curious, but withdrawn lately. Is something going on at home?" I gave her the honest version. "There's been change, but I'm working to make things right." "She trusts you," Mrs. Avery said. "That's clear? She lights up when she talks about your science projects together." I nodded, but the moment hit deeper than I expected. Mila was retreating into herself, and Sabella didn't even show up to notice. Afterward, Mila and I stopped at the bookstore and grabbed the next 2 books in the fantasy series she'd been devouring. I promised we'd read them together over the weekend. She smiled, a small, flickering kind of smile, but it was a start. That night, I received an unexpected call from Clare, my attorney. "Ryan, did you authorize Sabella to pull funds from the joint savings?" I straightened in my seat. "No. Why?" "She just wired $75,000 to a private account. I only caught it because we flagged transactions over $25K for review." I sat there for a moment, stunned but not surprised. Claire continued, "This isn't illegal, yet, but it is an early move. If she's moving funds, she's planning something, likely prepping for a legal dispute she thinks she'll control." "She doesn't know what I've documented," I said. She doesn't, Claire replied. But now would be the right time to separate accounts and lock down your financial footprint. I spent the next day executing that plan, closing unused lines of credit, moving my salary to a private account, freezing joint investment activity. Every step done legally, every email saved, every interaction with the bank recorded. The second fracture came 2 days later. I picked up the girls from school and took them to Central Park for ice cream and sketchbooks. Mila drew birds. Evie made up a superhero named Sparkle Giraffe. Later, when we returned to the penthouse to drop them off, Grayson was there. He was in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing one of my old sweaters. Sabella leaned against the island, sipping wine and laughing at something he said. She didn't hear the elevator open, but he did, and his face twisted into something between guilt and defiance. "Ryan," he said, nodding. I looked at the girls. "Go to your rooms," I said softly. They didn't argue. I stepped fully into the kitchen, standing a few feet from him. I didn't raise my voice. "You wore that sweater when you were my guest," I said. "I'd appreciate it if you never wore it again." Sabella smirked. "Jesus, Ryan. Really?" Grayson opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I'm here to let you know, both of you, that I've filed for joint legal and sole physical custody." Her wine glass froze midair. "You're bluffing," she said. "No," I said. "I'm prepared." She set the glass down too hard. "This is ridiculous. You want to rip them away from me because your ego's bruised? You're welcome to try and frame it that way in court," I said. "But we both know the cameras don't lie." Her eyes widened. "You put cameras in the house?" "I did. 3 of them, all legal, all recording evidence of repeated emotional neglect and non-parental behavior." "You son of a—" "I'm not here to fight," I repeated. "Just to inform." I turned to leave. And behind me, she called out, "You'll regret this." I didn't answer. The third fracture came like a gut punch. It happened the night Sabella showed up at the Mercer unannounced. I opened the door expecting room service and instead found her in a long black coat, eyes rimmed red, mascara streaked. She looked tired, not the curated exhaustion she used to weaponize, but the real kind, the kind that sits in your bones. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in. She stood by the window for a long time before turning to face me. "I didn't think you had it in you," she said. "To what?" "To detach, to move like this." "I'm not moving to hurt you," I said. "I'm moving to protect what matters." She laughed, quietly, bitterly. "I thought Grayson would make things easier. He's exciting, sure, but he's shallow. He doesn't know the girls. He doesn't know how to carry a bad day. He doesn't even know how I like my coffee." "Then why did you choose him?" I asked, genuinely. "I don't know," she said. "I thought I was escaping a rut. Turns out I jumped into quicksand." She looked down, then said, "I miss who we used to be." "That version of us is gone," I replied. She walked toward me, hesitant. "Do you think we could ever rebuild?" That was her 4th move. I'd seen the first 3: deflection, blame, gaslight. This was nostalgia, manipulated vulnerability. I didn't bite. "No," I said. "But we can coexist, for the girls. That's it." She nodded slowly. "So that's final?" "Yes." She left without another word. But the final fracture, what really broke the illusion, came the next morning. Claire called. "You need to see this." She sent me a link. Sabella had posted a long captioned photo on Instagram, a black and white shot of her holding Evie's hand at the park. The caption read, trying to keep things normal for my girls while navigating the storm of a difficult separation. Some people weaponize children. I choose love. I stared at it for a long time. She was building a public image, a mother betrayed, rising strong. But I had the receipts, the footage, the timestamps, the contradictions. That same afternoon, I drafted a letter to the court, formally requesting mediation to fast-track the custody case. Claire filed it within the hour. The cracks weren't cracks anymore. They were fault lines. And Sabella knew it. Because she wasn't just losing me. She was losing the image she had built. The control, the narrative, the audience. The mask was slipping, and what stood behind it wasn't strength or grace. It was desperation. And I wouldn't let her use my daughters to cover it up. Not now. Not ever. The public narrative Sabella tried to build didn't just backfire. It cracked wide open like a dropped champagne flute on marble. The Instagram post was only the beginning. Within days, a handful of her friends, ones who hadn't already quietly distanced themselves, began asking me what was really going on. I said nothing public, nothing reactive. But one person didn't need to ask, Inez. She messaged me the day after Sabella's post went live. Want me to break the glass, or are you doing it yourself? I replied, let her think she's in control. That's when she'll make the biggest mistake. And she did. A week later, I picked up the girls on a Sunday night. Evie was crying in the lobby, holding a crumpled pink jacket in one hand and a sandwich in the other. Mila was quiet but tense, eyes locked on the wall like she was trying not to feel anything. Sabella had been 30 minutes late, no explanation. On the ride to the Mercer, Mila whispered, Mom said she might move us to LA. I gripped the steering wheel. Did she say when? She said she's thinking about it, but Grayson's already got an apartment there. My knuckles went white. She was planning a parental abduction, subtle, dressed as a lifestyle shift, but the pattern was clear. She was attempting to shift geography before the court could finalize physical custody. That night, I sent Claire everything. A new affidavit, Mila's account, a notarized log from the last 4 weeks, documenting Sabella's lateness, lack of communication, inconsistent pickup routines, and increasing pressure on the girls to lie. Claire called the next morning. We're not waiting. I'm filing an emergency petition for a temporary custody order, today. It was the first open shot in what would become a war of attrition. 2 days later, Sabella showed up at my hotel suite unannounced, again. This time, she didn't look tired. She looked cornered. You're out of your mind, she said, the moment I opened the door. An emergency petition? Are you trying to embarrass me professionally? I'm trying to keep my daughters safe and stable, I said calmly. You've made erratic moves. You've threatened to move across the country without any formal agreement. That's not co-parenting. That's recklessness. She stepped inside, uninvited. You're framing this like I'm the villain. You built that frame yourself. I just held up the mirror. She stood there for a beat, silent, then lowered her voice. Ryan, we can still fix this. If you drop the petition, we can go back to mediation. Maybe even try again. You and me. It was a new angle. The guilt card had failed. Nostalgia didn't stick. This was desperation laced with seduction. I shook my head. No. Why not? She snapped. Because I don't trust you. And you don't love me. You love control. Her face dropped like I'd slapped her. I made mistakes. But you... I was faithful. I stayed present. I stayed committed. You broke the marriage. And now, you want to rewrite the story to make it seem mutual. Her next line cut sharp. You'll never be enough for someone else, Ryan. You're too sensitive. I didn't flinch. I'd heard worse. But I saw it for what it was, a dying grip, an insult weaponized as armor. I opened the door. You should go. She walked out without looking back. Claire's petition was accepted by the court that Friday. We were scheduled for a temporary custody hearing in 10 days. Until then, we followed a strict 50-50 split. 1 week on, 1 week off, with no variation unless formally submitted through our attorneys. And that's when Sabella started breaking the rules. It began with small infractions, late pickups, missed calls. Then came something more serious. She dropped the girls off 3 hours early on my off week, claiming she had an emergency gallery showing. But later, Inez sent me a photo. Sabella and Grayson at an influencer dinner in Soho, laughing like nothing mattered. The girls noticed. Mila was quieter. Evie started wetting the bed again. Then the next twist hit, and it came from someone I didn't expect. Xavier, a former colleague from a startup project Sabella once invested in. He messaged me, "You didn't hear this from me, but Sabella's about to launch a new venture, and she's naming Grayson as creative director. She's moving assets fast. Watch your joint holdings." I froze. She wasn't just repositioning herself as a single mother and art dealer. She was repositioning herself as a brand, Sabella Grayson, the chic, modern couple building a gallery empire. And she was trying to divert any shared equity before the divorce could lock financial terms. That night, I requested a forensic audit of our joint assets. Clare connected me with a finance specialist who'd handled similar cases with high-profile separations. He moved quickly, quietly, and methodically. 3 days later, he sent me a report. $210,000 in unaccounted-for transfers, new LLC filings under shell entities, and a brand plan for a digital media series called Modern Motherhood Unfiltered, featuring Sabella as the host. It was brazen, reckless, and perfectly aligned with her pattern. Build the illusion, then cash it in. I didn't react publicly. I didn't confront her. I sent everything to Clare. She filed a motion to freeze marital assets. We weren't just escalating anymore. We were now on a path toward full exposure. The next escalation came through the girls. It was a Tuesday evening when Mila pulled me aside after dinner. "Mom said she might not let us stay here anymore," she whispered. "Why not?" "She said you're turning us against her, that the court will see that." I kept my face neutral. "You know I'd never do that, right?" She nodded, but her eyes were full of worry. Evie came into the room moments later, holding a drawing. It was of our apartment at the Mercer, with her and Mila on the couch watching a movie. A small note was scribbled at the bottom in Evie's child handwriting. "I like this house better because Daddy is nice here." My chest tightened. They were being dragged into the war. That weekend, I took the girls to a new apartment I had quietly leased. 3 bedrooms, a private rooftop, walking distance to their school. It was my long-term plan for post-custody stabilization. I didn't explain the details. I just told them, this might be home soon. They both smiled. That night, after they slept, I sat on the balcony and went through every note, log, and video timestamp I had collected over the past 4 months. Sabella had underestimated me. She thought because I didn't scream or explode, I was weak. But calm is not weakness. It's power. Concentrated. The last twist came the night before the custody hearing. I received an anonymous email. No subject. Just a single line of text. Check Grayson's past employment history in Berlin. At first, I thought it was spam. But something about the timing, so close to the court date, made me dig. And what I found wasn't just a red flag. It was a detonator. Grayson had been fired from a Berlin-based art consultancy 3 years ago for conduct unbecoming of a public partner. The details were sealed, but local art blogs had hinted at inappropriate workplace relationships and financial irregularities. I forwarded the information to Clare. She responded in minutes. This changes the credibility dynamic completely. If we can show that Sabella's new live-in partner is unstable or potentially risky around children, we can push for supervised visitation. It was the final escalation. Not because I wanted to destroy her, but because I would not let my daughters be exposed to chaos disguised as charm. The hearing was set for 10 a.m. at the family court downtown. I wore a navy suit, crisp white shirt, and no tie. Simple, clean, confident. Sabella arrived 15 minutes late, dressed in an all-black designer outfit, flanked by her attorney and Grayson, who sat in the back like a silent partner in a doomed startup. Claire and I moved in silence. No small talk, no bravado. The judge entered. We rose. The room settled. And everything we had documented, endured, and prepared for over 4 months began to take shape under oath. But that story, our first day in court, that's for the next chapter. The courtroom wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The tension carried in silence, the kind you could feel pressing against your chest like a cinder block. I sat beside Claire at the petitioner's table, my hands folded tightly in my lap. My girls weren't there, by design. They were with Inez, who'd offered to keep them away from the noise and shield them from the wreckage we all knew was coming. I'd told her, if they ask, say I'm helping fix something that broke. They'll understand later. Sabella entered 15 minutes late, again. Always just late enough to seem above the rules, but not quite late enough for the court to reprimand her. She wore a high-necked black silk blouse, hair pulled into a perfectly loose chignon, no wedding ring. Grayson was in the gallery section, seated behind her. He didn't look at me. The judge, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses and a voice like gravel, took the bench. He looked between both parties and offered a simple directive. This is not about feelings. This is about stability, structure, and what's in the best interest of 2 young girls. Claire stood first. Her tone was calm, crisp. We're requesting full physical custody for Mr. Ryan Atlas with joint legal custody shared. The mother may retain visitation rights, supervised where appropriate. Our submission includes digital and testimonial evidence of neglect, instability, and deliberate attempts to alienate the children from their father. Sabella's lawyer, a sharp, image-driven woman named Daria Farrow, stood and countered. We dispute all claims of neglect and maintain that Mrs. Atlas has been the primary emotional caregiver. Mr. Atlas has chosen to weaponize legal tools to punish his wife for ending their marriage. Claire didn't flinch. She stood and handed a thick file to the clerk. Exhibits A through F, she said, include footage from interior surveillance showing the children being left alone for extended periods, contradictory verbal instructions issued to them about lying to their father, and live-in exposure to an adult male with no legal relationship to the children. The judge raised an eyebrow. Let's begin with Exhibit A. The screen rolled down. The footage began. It was quiet, not dramatic, just real. In one clip, Mila sits alone in the kitchen for over an hour doing homework while Evie plays on the floor beside her. Sabella is heard in the background, laughing on a video call. In another, she tells the girls, "Don't tell your dad about this weekend. He wouldn't understand." There's a third, Evie crying alone in her room while Sabella walks past on her phone. By the end of the first 5 minutes, the judge was leaning forward, frowning. Daria objected. "This is a violation of personal privacy." The judge cut her off. These recordings were made legally inside a jointly owned residence. The children are at the center of this dispute. I'll allow it. Claire transitioned to the next set of exhibits. Timestamps, receipts, even the art gallery's promotional posts that contradicted Sabella's excuses for missing pickups or dropping off the girls early. Then came the final clip. Grayson in the penthouse, shirtless, visibly drunk, yelling into his phone while Evie's backpack lies on the counter next to an open bottle of vodka. It was damning. Daria attempted to pivot, calling it a moment of poor judgment unrelated to the children's welfare. Claire waited until she was done, then stood again. We've also submitted testimony from Eastgate Elementary's faculty indicating signs of emotional withdrawal in both girls, changes that correlate with irregular custody behavior. Then she played her final card. "We have new findings," Clare said, handing a sealed folder to the clerk. Grayson Teller, Mrs. Atlas's live-in partner, was terminated from his previous role in Berlin under sealed allegations of sexual harassment and financial misconduct. Gasps rippled in the room. Even Sabella's expression cracked for the first time. Clare looked directly at the judge. "We're not suggesting that Mr. Teller has harmed the children. But we are showing that Mrs. Atlas failed to disclose these facts despite knowingly placing her children under his unsupervised care. That constitutes a lapse in judgment too serious to ignore." The judge called for a 15-minute recess. Outside in the hallway, Sabella stormed past me without a word. Grayson followed, but she shoved his hand away when he tried to touch her arm. That was the last time I saw them walk side by side. When court resumed, the judge didn't delay. "In light of the evidence and in consideration of the children's documented stress, I am granting Mr. Atlas temporary full physical custody, with Mrs. Atlas allowed supervised visitation pending a formal psychological evaluation. Legal custody remains joint. Financial disclosures will be independently reviewed prior to final asset division." He struck the gavel. That was it. But emotionally, that moment split the world in half. Sabella sat frozen. Grayson had already left. Clare placed her hand briefly on my shoulder. "You did everything right," she whispered. I exited the courtroom slowly, not triumphantly. I hadn't won a war. I had secured peace. For my daughters, for our lives, for something honest to begin. Outside, Inez was parked across the street. I got into the passenger seat and looked back at the girls through the window. "Where are we going?" Mila asked. "Home," I said. "Which one?" "The one we're building next," I replied. That night, after the girls were asleep, I walked out onto the rooftop of our new apartment. The city below looked endless, but somehow calmer than it had for months. I sat down, took a breath, and finally let myself feel everything. Relief, grief, stillness, and somewhere beneath all of that, victory. But not the loud, vengeful kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes after choosing your dignity over destruction. 3 days after the court's ruling, Sabella's public image began to implode. The story broke first on a niche New York art blog known for its inside gossip, Gallery Scope, a short exposé titled, "From Canvas to Controversy, Sabella Atlas's New Venture Suspended Amid Allegations," went live. Within it, the journalist delicately referenced inconsistencies in Sabella's financial transfers, pending legal actions, and her relationship with Grayson Teller, a man with undisclosed professional misconduct abroad. Within hours, the headline was circulating in art circles and industry group chats. Several sponsors quietly pulled their support from her upcoming gallery opening. Invitations were postponed indefinitely, and her new startup's social pages were deactivated without explanation. The email from one of her former investors, anonymously forwarded to me by Xavier, was blunt. "We are no longer confident in the ethical alignment of the founding team. Our support is suspended pending further investigation." Sabella didn't issue a statement. She just went silent. Grayson, however, wasn't built for silence. A week later, a private recording between him and an ex-employee surfaced. Grainy but unmistakably his voice, boasting about how he was rebranding Sabella's old money aesthetic for Gen Z wallets and playing dad to secure long-term leverage. The backlash was swift and brutal. His personal Instagram was flooded with comments, some mocking, some furious. Brands he'd partnered with backed away. His modeling agency removed his name from their digital roster. The face that once smirked in curated hotel mirrors was now linked to instability, manipulation, and opportunism. It was the end of their power couple fantasy. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't post. I didn't leak a thing. The only thing I did was keep showing up for my daughters. Every morning, I woke up early to prep their lunches. Mila liked cucumber slices with a sprinkle of lemon salt, and Evie only ate grapes if I peeled the skin. We walked to school together. At night, I helped with homework, read bedtime stories, and listened to Mila's rants about middle school drama like it was headline news. I wasn't perfect. I was just consistent. One Thursday evening, as I was folding laundry in the living room, my phone buzzed. Claire. "Ryan," she said. "Sabella's attorney submitted a motion to reduce her visitation requirements." I sat down. "On what grounds?" "She claims the current supervision requirement is preventing her from establishing a stable maternal bond. She's requesting bi-weekly unsupervised weekends." I closed my eyes. "She's not stable," I said. "She hasn't even followed through with the psychological evaluation yet." "Exactly," Claire replied. "We'll file an opposition motion. But you need to know, they're likely prepping to make this a PR narrative, painting her as a mother wronged by a controlling ex." "They already tried that," I said. "It didn't stick." "It might now. The story's shifted." People love redemption arcs. She wasn't wrong. I'd seen it happen. How quickly people forget betrayal if it's wrapped in a tearful podcast interview or a stylized photo of healing over herbal tea. Still, I stayed focused. The court sided with us again. Her motion was denied pending full completion of counseling and evaluation benchmarks. The judge added a clause. Failure to comply within 60 days would result in a reevaluation of even the supervised terms. Sabella didn't show up for her next 2 supervised visits. Inez told me later she'd seen her alone at a rooftop bar in Tribeca the night of her canceled visit. "She didn't look well," she said softly. "Whatever game she was playing, I think she lost track of the rules." 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected text from Sabella. "Can we meet? Just you and me. No lawyers. I just need 10 minutes. At first, I hesitated, but something in her tone, stripped of spin, raw, felt different. We met in a quiet corner of Central Park, mid-morning on a Wednesday. She wore a tan coat over jeans, no makeup, no camera-ready hair. "I'm not here to change anything," she said immediately. "I'm not trying to make a case." I nodded. "Then why?" She took a breath. "Because I finally stopped spinning long enough to realize what I did." I said nothing. She looked down at her hands. "I was chasing something that wasn't real. Not Grayson, not the gallery, just a version of myself I thought I had to become. The independent woman who didn't need anyone. The brand. I thought if I controlled the narrative, I could avoid feeling small." "You weren't small," I said quietly. "You were loved. Fully." She nodded slowly. "I know. And I threw it away because I thought love had to feel like power, not peace." Silence hung for a moment. Then she said something that took the air out of my lungs. "I know I hurt the girls. Not just you. And I hate myself for that." I looked at her then, really looked, at the tiredness in her face, the apology in her posture. It wasn't performative. It was late, fractured, and real. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she added, "but I needed you to know that I finally see it." I nodded. "Thank you for saying that." She stood up. "I won't fight you anymore." Then she walked away. That night, Mila asked, "Did Mom call today?" "No," I said honestly. She looked relieved. "I like it better when it's just us," Evie said from the couch, mouth full of popcorn. I smiled. "Me too." The next week, Claire called again. She signed an amendment, she said. Sabella's voluntarily reducing her visitation to once a month. No challenge, no appeal. I was stunned. She's also withdrawing from all claims to marital business assets. Wants a clean split. It was the most peaceful she'd ever been, and I realized then her war had never been with me. It had always been with herself. In the weeks that followed, life found rhythm. Mila made the school's spring play. Evie joined a beginner's soccer team. I launched a small consulting firm from the apartment. Nothing flashy, just a quiet, profitable structure that let me stay present and stable. One Friday evening, after a long week of calls and client briefs, I found a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten. Inside was a single note card. It read, "You chose dignity." And that's the thing I could never buy, brand, or borrow. It wasn't signed, but I knew it was from her. I folded the card and slid it into the back of my desk drawer. Not because I wanted to hold on to the past, but because sometimes even a final echo deserves a place, not on display, but tucked away, as proof that healing is possible. It's strange how peace creeps in, not with fanfare or sweeping music, but with quiet rituals you almost don't notice at first. Like setting 2 lunchboxes side by side on the kitchen counter each morning, or remembering without effort that Mila hates when the orange slices touch the sandwiches, or hearing the soft scuff of Evie's feet as she sleepwalks to the couch for her usual morning cuddle before the sun fully rises. It's not dramatic, it's not headline-worthy, but it's everything. 6 months had passed since the custody ruling. In that time, life had settled into a rhythm that didn't feel temporary anymore. It felt earned. Sabella hadn't fought the amended agreement. In fact, she distanced herself even more, showing up only for her once-a-month visit at the supervised family center. The girls were always quiet afterward, neither upset nor excited, just numb, like it was an appointment they tolerated out of obligation. I never spoke badly about her, not once, but I didn't sugarcoat reality either. "Your mom's figuring herself out," I'd say when they asked why she didn't come to Evie's recital or Mila's art showcase. "She's got things she's working through." And slowly, they stopped asking. Clare finalized the asset division in March. Sabella waived her claims on my consulting firm and agreed to a clean financial break. No alimony, no public statements, no more games. It was as if she'd finally realized the war she started had cost her more than she ever imagined, and that there was nothing left to win. Grayson disappeared from New York's social radar. Rumor had it he'd fled back to Europe. One of his former brand partners leaked a statement confirming the severance of all future projects. He'd gone from rising star to cautionary tale in a matter of weeks. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I focused on building the kind of life you don't have to defend. My consulting firm grew slowly, then steadily. Word of mouth brought in clean clients, tech founders looking to rebuild teams after funding winters, creative startups needing operational structure. I ran the company from a home office and picked up the girls from school without ever missing a beat. One Tuesday afternoon, I was walking Mila and Evie home when Mila asked a question that caught me off guard. "Do you think Mom ever really loved you?" I didn't answer right away. We crossed Lexington Avenue, waited for the walk signal, then turned up our block. "I think she loved a version of me," I said carefully. "And I think I loved a version of her." "What does that mean?" Evie asked, skipping ahead on the sidewalk. "It means we both changed," I said, "and not always in ways we understood." Mila looked thoughtful. "Do you still hate her?" "I never hated her," I said honestly. "But I don't let what she did define who I am anymore." She nodded and didn't ask anything else. But the weight of that conversation stayed with me for days, not because it hurt, but because it marked a new chapter in how they saw the world. We were no longer healing from the past. We were learning how to live beyond it. Later that week, I met Claire for coffee. Not legal business, just a thank you overdue. "You look lighter," she said, stirring sugar into her espresso. "I feel lighter," I said, "like I finally stepped out of someone else's story." She smiled. "That's what peace does. It stops asking you to perform." Before we parted, she handed me an envelope. "What's this?" "Final custody review paperwork. You're locked in as primary parent. Sabella didn't contest." I nodded, heart strangely still. I had expected one last ambush, one more unpredictable act, but none came. As I walked back to the apartment, I passed a bookstore with a children's section in the front window. A copy of Where the Wild Things Are sat among the display. Mila used to sleep with that book under her pillow. I stepped in and bought it. That night, I read it to Evie before bed, my voice low, rhythmic. She curled against me, already half asleep before the last page. In the quiet afterward, I sat on the edge of my bed, looking out over the skyline. I thought about everything we'd lost, and everything we'd gained in return. Then I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I opened my personal journal and wrote a letter, not to Sabella, not to the girls, to myself. You didn't break. You recalibrated. You let the storm come, and then you rebuilt without apology. This is your story now, and you're telling it right. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and went to sleep without tension in my chest for the first time in years. The next morning, Mila asked if she could cook pancakes solo style. She burned the first batch. Evie fed one to the dog. We all laughed until we cried. And just like that, the house felt whole. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was finally honest. And in the wreckage of betrayal, silence, and slow rebuilding, I'd discovered something stronger than revenge or regret. I'd found peace, and I wasn't letting it go for anyone. Sometimes, life doesn't shatter in one loud cinematic crash. Sometimes, it erodes quietly, through small betrayals, silence where there should be warmth, and love that forgets how to show up. But if there's one truth that anchors this story, it's that dignity doesn't demand an audience, and healing rarely needs permission. The most powerful rebuilds happen not in grand gestures, but in the quiet routines, the hard boundaries, and the choice to show up every single day, especially when it hurts. Strength isn't loud, it's consistent. And sometimes, peace is the final revenge. If this story stirred something in you, if you saw a piece of yourself in the pain, the rise, or the stillness that followed, we hope you'll take a moment to reflect and share. These moments, these stories, help remind us that we're never truly alone in what we carry. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts, and follow the channel so you never miss another story filled with real emotion, deep truth, and the power of rising. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next one.